Part 1. Before everything fell apart, my life with Sarah felt stable. Maybe not exciting in the way movies sell you, but real, tangible. We had a 3-year-old daughter, Lily, who thought the world spun just for her. We had a modest home, a battered SUV, and matching coffee mugs we picked out when we were still foolish enough to believe love was invincible. I worked in tech, long hours, too many late nights, and Sarah taught part-time at a local preschool. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was ours. Most evenings, I'd come home to the smell of dinner half-cooked, Lily's toys strewn across the living room, and Sarah's easy smile as she wiped her hands on a towel and said, "Hey, babe. Welcome home." That smile, it used to be enough to make everything make sense. But lately, it felt different. The first crack was so small it almost didn't register. A few late nights here and there. Nothing unusual. Life gets busy. "Paperwork," she said once, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear without meeting my eyes. "Staff meeting ran late," she said another time, keys jangling nervously in her hand. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. You don't just throw away years of trust because your wife came home a little late. That's how paranoid men are made, and I wasn't going to be that guy. Still, the unease slithered under my skin. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself I was just tired from work, from life. I clung to that lie like it was a lifeboat. Then came the secrecy. Sarah started guarding her phone like a dragon hoarding treasure. She used to leave it lying around kitchen counter, coffee table, sometimes even the bathroom sink. Now it was always in her pocket or face down wherever she went. Notifications were suddenly silent. Passwords changed. She laughed it off when I asked about it, tossing her hair and saying something about new privacy settings and crazy spam texts. But I saw the way her fingers tightened around the phone when it buzzed. I saw the way she angled the screen away from me. One night after Lily went to bed, we sat on opposite ends of the couch. I was trying to lose myself in a basketball game, pretending not to notice how Sarah smiled down at her phone, fingers flying over the keyboard, giggling under her breath at something or someone I wasn't privy to. It should have been nothing. A private joke. A meme. Some dumb thing. But it wasn't. Because when I asked, just casually, "Who's making you smile like that?" she stiffened. Only for a second, a blink, a heartbeat, but I caught it. She recovered fast, smiled at me with a tightness that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Oh, just a group chat. Mom's from Lily's school." I nodded, forced to laugh, forced myself to believe it. What else could I do? Start an argument? Demand to see her messages? That wasn't me. That wasn't the man I promised I would be when I slid a ring onto her finger and told her I trusted her with my whole damn life. A few nights later, she floated the idea like it was just some harmless conversation starter, like she wasn't tossing a hand grenade into the middle of our lives. "We should talk about opening up the marriage," she said casually, scraping the last bit of ice cream from her bowl, as if she were suggesting we try a new restaurant. I blinked. Thought I misheard. "What?" I laughed, a short, nervous bark, waiting for her to grin and say she was joking. But Sarah didn't laugh. She didn't even look at me. She set her bowl in the sink and started washing it like she hadn't just detonated everything. "I mean it," she said over the running water. "We're young. Life's short. Maybe it would be good for us. You know? Explore. Grow. Make sure we're not just clinging to something out of fear." Fear. The word echoed around the kitchen. I didn't know what to say. Every nerve in my body screamed that this was wrong, but my mouth was filled with cotton. I just stared at her back, her shoulders stiff, like she was bracing for a fight. I mumbled something, I don't even remember what, and stumbled off to bed early, claiming a headache. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I tried to make sense of it. Maybe she was just feeling trapped. Maybe she was having some sort of early midlife crisis. It didn't have to mean what my gut was already whispering. But I couldn't shake the image of her smiling down at her phone. I couldn't shake the tightness in her voice, the way she flinched when I touched her lately, like my hands were something foreign, something she didn't know how to receive anymore. The days that followed were full of half gestures and hollow words. Sarah kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but it was mechanical. She answered my questions, but her eyes darted everywhere except my face. Lily was the only thing that still felt real, her chubby hands wrapping around my fingers, her laughter spilling into the empty spaces Sarah left behind. I started noticing little things. An unfamiliar cologne lingering in the car, definitely not mine. A hotel receipt crumpled at the bottom of the laundry basket. "Girls' night," she claimed, cheeks flushed too red. She started dressing differently too. More makeup, tighter jeans. New bras with tags I found stuffed deep in the trash. I kept trying to rationalize it. New year, new wardrobe. She's just trying to feel good about herself. Women deserve to feel beautiful. But no matter how many excuses I stacked up, they all came crashing down under the weight of my own gnawing fear. The truth was crouched in the corner of every room, whispering to me in the moments between breathing. Something was terribly wrong. I couldn't prove it. Not yet, but deep down, in that cold place we all try to ignore, I already knew. Sarah wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. And soon, I was going to find out just how deep the rot went. Part 2. After Sarah floated the idea of an open marriage, I spent a few days walking around like a man who had been gutted but hadn't realized he was bleeding out yet. I kept telling myself it was just a thought she voiced, nothing more. A conversation, not a decision. She hadn't actually done anything yet. But even as I repeated those lies, a cold calculation began taking root inside me. I needed to know the truth. I started with her phone. Sarah had always been casual with it before, left it lying around, forgotten in random corners of the house. Now it was practically welded to her hand. Every text was answered with a secretive smile. Every call was taken out of my earshot. One afternoon while she was bathing Lily, I slipped into the bedroom and grabbed her phone off the nightstand. My hands shook. I hated what I was doing, but I hated not knowing more. Locked. New passcode. Of course. The next day, I noticed something else. Sarah became vague about her schedule. She used to share her whole day without even thinking about it. Now, if I asked what time she was getting home, she hesitated, as if improvising. Not sure, she said once, twirling her necklace. Might grab coffee with some coworkers. What coworkers? I asked casually. You don't know them, she said too fast. A week later, her work meeting turned out to be a stop at a wine bar across town. I found the receipt stuffed in her jacket pocket, 2 glasses of wine, a dessert, an entree. For one person? No mention of friends. No explanation at all. I slid the receipt into my desk drawer, feeling like I was cataloging evidence at a crime scene. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I played the fool. I smiled. I kissed her forehead when she left the house wearing perfume she hadn't touched in years. I wished her a good evening when she came home late with her hair messy and her face too flushed. I watched everything. She started dressing differently. New tops, new jeans, subtle little things. And tucked deep into her drawers were delicate pieces of clothing I hadn't seen her wear for me in a long time. At night, when she climbed into bed beside me, she wore baggy pajamas and curled away like I was a stranger. It was the small gestures that tore me apart. The way she smiled down at her phone, running her fingers through her hair. The way she tilted her head and bit her lips slightly at whatever message she was reading. She didn't look at me like that anymore. One night, after Lily was asleep, I reached across the couch to touch her hand. She flinched. It was brief, but it was real. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched a live wire and pretended I hadn't seen anything. Later that week, Sarah came home late from book club. She kissed my cheek and I caught the faint scent of a cologne I didn't recognize, stronger and heavier than anything I owned. I said nothing. Later, tossing some clothes into the laundry, I noticed a faint smudge of makeup on the collar of her blouse. A shade she didn't wear. A quiet dread crept into my bones. Out of morbid curiosity, I started checking her car. Glove box. Floorboards. I didn't know what I was looking for. And then I found it. A hotel key card, wedged under the passenger seat. We hadn't stayed anywhere together recently. I turned the key card over in my hands for a long time before quietly slipping it into my desk with the other trophies of betrayal I had collected. Still, I said nothing. I needed more. Instead, I began setting little traps. Innocent questions. Observations. Seeing how her stories unraveled if I pulled gently at the edges. Minor confrontations happened. Why are you home so late? Oh, traffic was terrible. But the app says the roads were clear. She laughed thinly. You're obsessing. Stop overthinking everything. Always the gaslighting. You're paranoid. You're imagining things. Why can't you just trust me? Each time, she spun it around until I was the villain for even wondering. And deep down, I desperately wanted to believe her. Because if I wasn't wrong, if I was right, then everything we built was already broken. The final blow came on a quiet Tuesday. Sarah asked me to order something for Lily's birthday. Her laptop was lying around, and she told me to use it. It was old, dusty, half forgotten, but not empty. Hidden deep in a folder marked Work was a messaging app one didn't recognize. Curious, I clicked. Messages opened like floodgates. Nicknames, flirtations, inside jokes I wasn't a part of, references to coffee meetups that seemed loaded with more than caffeine, talk of missing our afternoons together, and the way you made me smile last time. It wasn't spelled out. No smoking gun. But it didn't have to be. I closed the laptop slowly, feeling the weight of the betrayal settle into my bones. Sarah wasn't considering an open marriage. She was already living it. She was just too cowardly to admit it. I sat there in the dim light of our living room, the hum of the refrigerator growing louder, and realized something bone deep and cold. I didn't know this woman anymore. And worse, she didn't know me either. Because the man sitting there, heart frozen and fist clenched, wasn't the same man who had promised her forever. That man was dead. We just hadn't buried him yet. Part 3. The night I truly broke wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no broken dishes, no slamming doors. It was quiet. I sat alone in the living room, the laptop open in front of me, Sarah's forgotten messaging app still glowing on the screen. I read through the messages again, slower this time, letting the reality soak into every fiber of my body. There was no room for doubt anymore. Nicknames, plans, references to hotel rooms. Talk about escaping the routine and getting lost in each other. Sarah hadn't just strayed. She had built a second life, one where I didn't exist. The woman I had trusted more than anyone was now someone I didn't recognize, a stranger with my wife's face. I closed the laptop, set it aside carefully, and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. Instead, a slow, steady numbness rolled over me, flattening everything. I didn't even cry. I felt the grief trying to rise, the urge to scream, to punch a wall, to sob until my chest caved in. But I shut it down, slammed a steel door over it, and turned the key. Feeling sorry for myself wouldn't change anything. I needed to think. I needed to act. The next morning, I called out of work. Feigned a stomach bug. Sarah barely noticed. She rushed through breakfast, threw on her coat, and left the house with a hurried kiss on Lily's forehead. No kiss for me. Not even eye contact. After she left, I got to work. I dug deeper. I remembered her banking app. She had switched banks a year ago, claiming it was because of better rates. I hadn't questioned it. We kept most of our savings together, but she said she wanted a personal account for her side income from tutoring. Something about that had always bothered me. Now it screamed. I pulled out old paperwork, pieced together statements from mail she'd tossed aside, recovered deleted emails. I set up online access using answers to her security questions, easy ones. Favorite color, pet's name, mother's maiden name. And there it was. Thousands of dollars missing. Withdrawals every month to places I didn't recognize, hotels, boutiques, even a weekend rental property 2 counties over. Sarah wasn't just entertaining someone. She was funding a whole fantasy life. While I worked overtime and skipped vacations to build a future for our family, she was siphoning money to bankroll stolen weekends. My mouth went dry. I sat perfectly still, afraid that if I moved, I might shatter. Later that afternoon, when Lily napped, I started sorting through her old emails. Hidden folders, buried messages, photos. Nothing graphic. Just enough to slice me open. Sarah smiling in unfamiliar places. Sarah clinking glasses across a restaurant table with a man whose face was always just out of frame. Sarah wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary, only she hadn't worn it for me. Each picture another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I was living. And still, I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't rage. I took screenshots, saved files, collected receipts. I built my case like a man preparing for war. By the time evening came, the house was filled with the smell of dinner, a casserole Sarah had thrown in the oven on her way out, as if routines could camouflage the rotting foundation beneath us. When she walked through the door, smiling distractedly and kicking off her shoes, I didn't say a word. I smiled back. I kissed Lily goodnight. I sat at the table with Sarah, listened to her talk about her day, vague, polished, empty words, and nodded in all the right places. Inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I had already left her. She just didn't know it yet. That night, after she fell asleep with her back turned toward me, the way she always did now, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, planning. There would be no big confrontation. No shouting match she could twist into making me the bad guy. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I would dismantle her life piece by piece, the way she had dismantled mine. Cold, methodical, precise. I didn't know her anger. I owed her nothing. In the morning, I would start moving money. Contact a lawyer. Secure evidence. Protect Lily. Every move I made from here forward would be deliberate. Ruthless. Sarah had chosen her path. Now it was my turn. I turned my head slightly, watching her sleep under the pale glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. She looked so peaceful, so oblivious. I felt nothing. Not hate. Not love. Not even sadness. Only a brutal, iron-hard resolve. The Sarah I loved was gone. What lay beside me was a stranger. And by the time she realized what she had truly lost, it would be far too late to undo it. I closed my eyes and made the first move in my mind, sliding my queen across the board. The game had begun. Part 4. By the time the weekend rolled around, I was no longer a husband. I was an architect. And what I was building was not a home, it was an execution. I moved silently, methodically, like a man sharpening knives in the dark. First, I opened a private bank account in my name only. Redirected my paychecks. Transferred every liquid asset that wasn't nailed down, bonuses, savings bonds, even old investments I had forgotten about. Sarah wouldn't notice at first. She barely looked at our accounts anymore unless it was to swipe the debit card for her double life. Next, I hired an attorney. Not just any lawyer, the best family attorney in the county, someone with a reputation for dismantling people who underestimated him. We met in his office behind closed doors. I showed him the evidence, the hidden apps, the financial records, the hotel bookings, the secret withdrawals. He listened carefully, his expression hardening by the minute. When I finished, he leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "You're not just dealing with infidelity," he said. "You're dealing with fraud." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He explained that some of the accounts she had opened were in both our names, meaning if she defaulted or if anything illegal happened, I could be held responsible too. And it got worse. Sarah had used my social security number to open a second credit line months ago. Without my consent. Without my knowledge. It wasn't just betrayal. It was criminal. That was when something inside me clicked. Any lingering guilt. Any hesitation. Gone. Dead. Buried. We built the plan together. Quietly. Legally. Ruthlessly. There would be no warning. No confrontation she could twist into a sob story. Only a carefully orchestrated collapse. For 2 weeks, I played the part. Smiled when she laughed at her phone. Kissed her cheek when she rushed off for another meeting. Tucked Lily into bed at night, promising myself that no matter what happened, she would never pay for her mother's sins. During the day, I gathered every shred of evidence. I opened every locked drawer, photographed every suspicious bill, printed every hidden message. I installed a GPS tracker on Sarah's car. I cloned her phone onto a private server. Every move she made, I saw. Then, when everything was ready, I pulled the first string. One Thursday morning, Sarah was out. I dropped Lily off at preschool, then went to the bank and froze our joint accounts. All of them. Savings. Checking. Retirement. Locked tight with my lawyer's oversight. Then I called the credit companies and placed fraud alerts on all accounts connected to my name. I filed formal identity theft reports. I changed every password, every PIN, every login. By noon, Sarah's cards started declining. I knew because my phone lit up with text after text. First polite, then confused, then angry. I didn't answer. I was already at step 2. My lawyer filed for divorce, citing adultery and fraud. A formal demand for full custody of Lily was prepared, backed by stacks of evidence. An injunction to freeze all shared assets was filed the same day. Sarah had no idea what was coming. She was still scrambling, still trying to figure out why her cards weren't working when she walked into the restaurant that evening for her girls' night, the same restaurant where her secret friend was waiting for her at the bar. And where I was waiting too. I sat in a corner booth with my lawyer, dressed in a dark suit, watching the scene unfold like a play. Sarah spotted her friend, smiled brightly, hurried across the floor, and then stopped short when she saw me. Her smile faltered. Her steps slowed. She knew. Not everything yet, but enough. My lawyer stood up calmly and handed her a thick envelope. The divorce papers. The financial disclosures. The fraud complaint. The custody demands. The entire structure of her second life exposed in neat, cold legal language. For a moment, Sarah just stood there, frozen. Her friend, a man I recognized from the messages, leaned over, whispering something, probably telling her to stay calm. probably not realizing he was listed as a co-defendant in my lawsuit for alienation of affection. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Page after page, her face drained of color. The restaurant was silent except for the soft clinking of glasses and distant background music. It was surreal, watching the woman I once built my world around fall apart right there in public, surrounded by strangers who didn't know they were witnessing the death of a marriage. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were wide and glassy. She opened her mouth, maybe to plead, maybe to explain, but I didn't give her the chance. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked right past her without a word. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need to see the tears. I didn't need her excuses or her apologies. I had already buried the man who would have cared, and in his place, there was someone colder, sharper, unbreakable. I pushed open the restaurant doors and stepped into the cool evening air, feeling nothing but a quiet, brutal satisfaction. Behind me, Sarah's world crumbled. Ahead of me, a different life waited, scarred, yes, but mine alone to rebuild. And I would rebuild it with hands that knew exactly what it meant to lose everything and survive. Part 5. Life didn't magically get better after I tore everything down. There were no cinematic sunrises, no swelling music, no dramatic redemption arcs. Just long, brutal days spent sorting through the wreckage Sarah left behind. Paperwork, court dates, custody meetings. My life became a series of forms and signatures, each one carving the final gravestone over our marriage. The divorce dragged through the system slower than I expected. Sarah fought at first, hard. She cried in court. She begged. She tried to paint herself as the victim. But the mountain of evidence I carried into that courtroom, cold, unshakable, crushed every lie she tried to spin. When the dust finally settled, it wasn't even close. I kept custody of Lily. I kept the house. I kept my savings. Everything she thought she could bleed from me was locked away behind walls she would never climb again. Sarah was ordered to pay restitution for the fraud. Not that she had much left after her double life collapsed. She lost her job. Her circle of friends evaporated. Her lover disappeared the moment real consequences landed. There were no heartfelt goodbyes. No tearful apologies. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, I welcomed it. The first few weeks after the final court date were the hardest. The house felt hollow. Lily asked questions I didn't know how to answer without poisoning her heart too soon. Some nights I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the empty seat across from me, feeling the loneliness claw at my ribs. But I stayed still. I let it hurt. I let it burn through me like wildfire. And slowly, steadily, it burned something else away too. The grief. The self-blame. The guilt for not saving someone who didn't want to be saved. I built new routines. I packed up the relics of our marriage, stacked them in boxes, and shoved them into the garage like a tomb I would never open again. I didn't date. I didn't seek out distractions. I rebuilt myself the way a man rebuilds a house that burned down, one nail, one plank, one wall at a time. And this time, I built it with fireproof walls. 3 months passed before Sarah resurfaced. It was a rainy Thursday night, the kind of rain that drowns the world in gray. When the doorbell rang, I expected a package, maybe a neighbor. Instead, it was her. Sarah stood on the porch, soaked and shivering, holding a battered suitcase like some tragic figure from a bad movie. Her eyes were red, her cheeks hollow. She looked like a ghost wearing her old skin. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "I have nowhere else to go." For a long moment, I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't feel. And then Lily peeked around the corner, sleepy-eyed and clutching her stuffed bear. That made the decision easy. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and stared Sarah down through the sheets of rain. "You made your choices," I said, my voice low and even. "Now live with them." Her face crumbled. She reached out, desperate, broken. I didn't flinch. I turned and walked back inside, locking the door behind me without a second glance. Let the rain have her. That night, I stayed up late, sitting at the kitchen table with a whiskey glass in my hand, watching the storm batter the windows. And I realized I didn't hate her anymore. Hating her would have meant wasting even one more heartbeat on something dead. I had nothing left to give her. No anger, no forgiveness, no pain. Only indifference, sharp, cold, final. 2 weeks later, as I cleaned out the last forgotten corners of the house, I found something wedged in the back of Sarah's nightstand. A letter. It wasn't addressed to me. It was for someone else. Someone I knew. My cousin. The same cousin who stood by me at my wedding. The one who toasted loyalty and forever with a smile on his face. The letter was old, dated months before Sarah ever whispered the words, open marriage. Inside, she spoke of secret meetings, of excitement she hadn't felt in years, of building a life, once the timing was right. All that time, while I broke my back building a home for her, they were building fantasies behind mine. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I folded the letter carefully, walked outside, and tossed it into the fire pit. Watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash, like everything else that tied me to the man I used to be. Because that man, the one who believed love was enough, was gone. In his place stood something colder, sharper, stronger. I wasn't just a survivor. I was reborn, steel forged from betrayal, ice hardened by fire. A man who knew the taste of total ruin and smiled anyway. The world had taken its best shot, and I was still standing.